So, is India a secular country? Well, we need to ask ourselves, well, that, the kind of secularism that India follows, perhaps if we could call it as a secularism or not, it's different because certainly it's not a kind of secularism what West follows. The secularism that West follows is perhaps um, separation of church and state, and that is exactly not what India follows, because India follows a kind of secularism which is basically treating all religions equally. Now, the fact is that you could have relation between religion, although it's quite difficult, but still, you could maintain the aspect of religion and government, and religion and state. You could have connections with religion and state, yet treat all religions equally. Uh, all the Scandinavian countries, for example, the Nordic countries, most of them have an official church. England has an official church. It doesn't mean that the England doesn't discriminates against its Muslim population or otherwise. Just because it has a there might be some discriminatory provisions, definitely, but it's kind of, it's not necessary uh, for treating all religions equally. You have to have no official state religion. That we think it's better for that, but that's not how India is. So of course, India doesn't have an official state religion. Hinduism is not an official state religion of India. Yet there is connection with. There is actually, you cannot say that there is a separation between church and state. There is quite many links, quite many connections with religion and the country. For example, uh, okay, so most of the government institutions, when they are opened with a Hindu puja. Most of the high courts opened, inaugurated with a Hindu puja. Most of the missiles launched are, with a Hindu puja. With ISRO launches its spaceship with Hindu puja. Most of the ceremonies and ceremonial openings are actually that done by Hindu pujaris, paid by Indian government. So you bring a Hindu priest. It doesn't matter who head these organizations, but that's traditionally across all the across country. There is all the most of the inaugural institutions which are inaugurated. They are inaugurated with a Hindu ceremony, and the fees that is paid, to these people, to the pundits, it's from government coffers. So that is one thing. Then, if you look at, there is a different civil laws for people of different religion. So, if you are a Muslim, you are allowed to follow an Islamic version of law. While if you are a Hindu, you have to follow Hindu code, which actually it's bit more something like a civil code, uniform civil code. And similarly for Christian personal law, Muslim personal law, and other for minorities, this usually is not seen in many secular countries, you having different civil laws. So for example, a Muslim in India is treated differently in matters of Muslim women in India is treated differently in matters of divorce than a Christian or a Hindu woman. So again, this is something which people could argue that she acknowledges that she is a Muslim. Therefore, however, this is also not seen in many secular countries. If you look at uh, um, the temple funds, now this is one thing which is quite amazing and quite discriminatory amongst the majority Hindu religion in the country. That is to say, if you donate something in a mosque or in a church or in a gurudwara or in a Zoroastrian temple or in a Jewish synagogue, that institution, that Jewish synagogue, temple, mosque, etc., the money remains with your religion. Government doesn't take it. On the other hand, if you give money in the temple, most of the temples, it doesn't remain in your religion. It is taken by the government for the government purpose, for the government treasury. In the government, it's put in the government treasury. So government maintains these temples, but the money, the huge amount of money that comes in these temples, it's not used for the it might be used for the purpose of endowments of like it might be used for the purpose of maintaining the temple, etc. But it's not used for, let's say, propagation of religion. But it's not used for, because government cannot officially propagate a religion. So it's not used for you could say a religious purpose altogether. While if you are a Muslim, your donation that's going to a mosque, it's purely in with your people, used for a religious purpose. You could use it as it is possible. The money that you are, it's the money that a Hindu gives to most of the Hindu temples. It's usually is tantamount to a tax paid by a normal Indian citizen. And I don't think so that is something called secularism. It's clear discrimination, I should say. Just like in militaries, for example, in military you have this you know you have all almost, except for I guess Assam Rifles, all the military regiments have this slogans which are Hindu in nature, were dedicated to Hindu gods and goddesses. So their war cries are dedicated to Hindu gods and goddesses. So these regiments, they are not divided on the basis of religion, they are divided on the basis of regions. And all these regiments also have people who are from minority religion. Yet in the war cry is a cry of Hindu god and goddesses. uh, there is special provisions for minorities in education. Government gives specific funds for upliftment of minorities. Now some may say that this is actually not quite, because minorities are discriminated, or their churches and mosques might be vandalized and so on and so forth. But one thing that we need to look here is this, that just because I'm a Muslim, I'm getting funds for my education from the government, and if I would have been a Hindu, then I would have not got it, right? So should a secular I mean, then you could clearly see, if people don't let's say Hindus don't care about their religion much, then they would definitely convert to these minority religions, because they're getting funds from the government. If if they hadn't been minority, they would not have got this. So it's clearly a kind of a material interest that is given to these people who are minorities. Now, in my opinion, okay, it depends upon circumstances. I should add a caveat to it. In special circumstances, you could do that. But technically, I should say that the the purpose of government towards religion is that every person should be allowed to practice their religion without any fear, and government should ensure that. So the purpose of the minority affairs minister, so to speak, should be that no church is destroyed, no mosque is destroyed, no mosque is vandalized, and minorities in this country are free to practice their religion. Rest, all the welfare schemes that you are providing, that should be provided irrespective of a religion. Otherwise, it's kind of a discrimination. So, and if you look at the history of India in general, its history of India is something uh, which involves a lot with religion. I mean, you cannot basically see India separated from religion. You have a lot of traditions. I mean, if you look, let's say the major religion in India, Hinduism. that is one of the oldest major religions in the world. Before the the New Testament Christianity, before secularly speaking, so to speak, I don't believe in this, but secularly speaking, before the advent of Judaism, before the advent of Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, etc. These beliefs were there, which later came to be Hinduism. Like there was at first there was nothing like Hinduism per se, but yes, it was something like Hinduism. So uh, it was there. Religious beliefs were there. There are people like Buddha and Mahavira and other gurus who have been part of this land, who were very influential. Very social reformers were religious people. Various freedom fighters were religious people. Gandhi was a religious guy. Subhash Chandra Bose was a religious guy. There were many ardent religious people. Religion had played an important role in freedom fight, in the fight for freedom. The first revolt for freedom, so to speak, in 1857. It is called as the Sepoys movement from the side of Britain. From the side of India, it's called as the first revolt for independence. It was in 1857. We got independence in 1947. In 1857, and that was primarily because of many reasons. There was primarily because there was a news or a rumor or whatever it is. I don't know whether it was a fact or whether it was a rumor that British were using the cow's flesh or cow's fat and the pig's fat for their cannons, in their cannons, for the cannonballs, for shooting of the cannonballs, etc. Now that offended both these communities, and that was one of the reasons why they started fighting against British. No doubt the king's princely states also helped, and the kings, etc., also fought for the freedom at that time. If you look at that was one thing. Then if you look at Gandhi, some Muslims in India vote for a particular party. Again, this is what I say. Like most of the Muslims, they have these parties, which, like, of course, for Christians also there are like Indian Christian Front, but Muslim League is there. Now, when the party's name itself is Muslim, when it says that it's work for the upliftment of Muslims, especially, and minorities, then you clearly are discriminating for the upliftment of the majority and upliftment of minority. You are discriminating the upliftment of majority by specifically focusing and specifically giving an attention. Your party's main agenda is upliftment of minority. So when it comes to power, you could be rest assured that the majority will not be as much as uplifted as the minority is. Then if you look at so in the past as well, there was a time when Muslims weren't that participating in it. It was mainly, the freedom struggle was mainly with regard to Hindus. So Gandhi devised a way to basically integrate Muslims into the freedom struggle, and the way he introduced he wanted to integrate this was with something which was never related to Indian freedom struggle at all. So this British government, Britishers had gone to Ottoman Empire, and they had dethroned Caliphate. Right, the Caliphate, or the Caliph, was dethroned, and these Muslims in India started Khilafat movement, revolting against the British for establishment of Caliphate. Muslims in southern Kerala as well, in the southern part of India, also started revolting against the British. In their revolt, it's also accused that the Indians were also persecuted by these Muslims. However, that's a different story. But certainly, it could be said that it was nothing related with the Indian independence. Yet the government, Gandhi said, we would integrate this. Now we would fight for Khilafat as well, that is to say, for establishment of caliphate in Ottoman Empire, for re-establishment of caliphate in Turkey, as well as for the establishment, for the freedom struggle. Now, my point is that, if you are fighting for the freedom struggle, what is caliphate going to do? What has it to do? Anything, like, it doesn't have anything to do with, India. It was clearly a religious purpose. Nothing to do with, like, how is a Hindu gaining something from this caliphate movement? So it was clearly a religious purpose. Uh, Partition was in the name of a religion, because they thought that two religions cannot, coexist together. They are altogether different culture, and they cannot coexist together. The Kashmir struggle, for example, has a lot to do with that partition as well. So clearly we could see that, and of course this is the, and I would end with it. Uh, I have to clarify this, whether it was actually true or not, or till what extent was this true. But I would say this happens to be true. I need to recheck it. But uh, when India was getting independence, um, at first, Lord Mountbatten came to, and released in the press that, India would be independent at 14th August 1947. He thought this. Oh, no, sorry. 15th August 1947. He said. Then what happened was that these people, astrologers. Now, astrology is something which, should not be connected with, a secular government. But astrologers came to Nehru, and Nehru, who was supposedly to be an agnostic, he astrologers came and said to them that, see, according to, our astrology of 15th August 1947 is not a good date, and they wanted to make it some shift it to some other date. Mountbatten was furious. He said, he was totally against it. Later, he said, as long as you people are going to believe in these things, India would never be independent. Uh, I'm not attacking anyone's belief in astrology. It's, if they want to believe in that, it's their own belief. I have nothing to do with it. But I guess a secular government should not be, involved in astrology. But Nehru devised a way to, in midnight, because the day in Hindu calendar starts from the sunrise. So from midnight, 12 o'clock till 6 o'clock in the morning, between that period, all the ceremony, etc., was over for India's independence. And therefore, astrologers decided the date of India's independence. Now, that is a thing. Now, again, there are few astrologers who also say that, India was never divided because of this fact. But however, it's their own belief. I'm not attacking them. But secularism is a fundamental part of the constitution, even though it came later to the constitution. It was a fundamental part in Keshavananda Bharati judgment. Yet we have to clearly see whether India is really secular in terms of separation of church and state or not.